Welcome back. In the last video we looked at how the sentence structure question is quite tricky because sentence structure itself is an umbrella term, which is a bit slippery and a bit dangerous. We looked at how actually what we need to be looking at are the techniques. So it's unlikely you'll ever walk past a brick wall and look at the individual bricks and how they're put together unless you're a builder and you might see something interesting, a new way of assembling the bricks. Likewise, when you're reading a novel or when you're reading text on your phone or on a tablet, you don't generally pause to look at the short sentences, the repetition, the lists. But we need to start doing that now. We need to start pausing and really analysing a text so that we can see the techniques that are hidden. Not hidden, but they're only there if you look for them. You only notice them if you look for them. So, in this video, we're aware that sentence structure is just the umbrella term. We're only going to look at one technique, and we're going to look at the technique of a list. So the writer uses a list. This is how you'll always start your answer to a question if you've chosen a list as your response. Now, we use lists every day, you and I. I keep a list in my head of what I need to do in school, outside of school. Sometimes I write those lists down. I'm sure you have a list in your head of the homework you need to do, what study you need to do, your activities for after school. One of the most famous lists around is the list that Santa made. Well, actually, he made two lists if we look carefully. He made a list of kids that are nice and a list of kids that are naughty. And note on this list that they are titled. The title of the list on the left is nice for nice kids, and the title on the list on the right is naughty for naughty kids. Now, we don't always write down the title of our lists because we kind of know what we want to do ourselves, but the title is important for what we want to do in close reading. So I'm going to give you another title, and I'm going to see if you can write the list. Here it is. The title is Subjects You Study in School. Now I'm sure you can rattle those off really fast. Here's some examples. English, maths, French, biology, history and PE. May not be exactly what you're studying, but close enough. So we get the idea of a list has a title, and then it's got a number of elements below. I'm going to give you another title now. Scottish cities. Okay, given enough time, I'm sure you'll come up with a short list. Inverness, Dundee, Aberdeen, Edinburgh and Glasgow. Now, the only thing is in close reading it works in the reverse. You're never going to be given the title of the list. You're going to have to work out the title. You're going to be given the list. I'm going to show you that now in this next slide. I'm going to give you a list, and I want you to think of what the title, if you were to give the list a title, what it would be. There's the list. What are those four elements? It's a list of something. I'm going to keep coming back to that word of. It's a list of American cities. Pretty straightforward list. Okay, let me give you another list, and I want you to come up with the title again. Here we go. Again, four elements. What is that a list of? Scottish football teams. Again, pretty straightforward. Let's do a third list. What is that a list of? Now take your time and pause the video if you want a couple of seconds to think about it. We've got four animals: rhino, giant panda, snow leopard and blue whale. What do they have in common that I can list them together? Well, what they have in common is that they're all endangered species. So I can call that a list of endangered species. And this is what you're going to have to do in the assessment. You're going to have to basically find a list in the text and then decide what is it a list of. Give it a title. Here's the same list, but more like how you would see it if it was put on the page. Now that list is hard to read, isn't it? It just doesn't fit right because it's missing punctuation. We don't use bullet points normally in a block of text, and you won't see a bullet point list in the National 5 assessment. So the writer has to find another way to make it easier for you to read. So we add punctuation. In this case, a comma. Another comma. And we don't end the list with a comma. We never end the list with a comma. We generally end it with the word and to signify that this is the end of the list. Now that sentence is a lot easier to read with the punctuation added in. There's another way though. A list doesn't have to have commas. Sometimes you'll notice that writers use semicolons, which is a full stop over the comma. And this is also a list. But just as with commas, they'll end with the word and to signify that it's the end of the list. So these are your markers to look out for when you're looking for a list. You're looking for usually commas followed by the word and that will signify that a list is being used by the writer. Now, not all commas involve lists, so you have to be quite judicious about this. You have to use your judgment and make sure you found a list, but that's what you're scanning for when you're looking for a list. Commas, semicolons, and usually the word and to mark the end of a list. So keep looking for this pattern. Okay, you will see it, or this pattern, and the more you look out for it, the easier it is going to be to spot them. Now, let's look at an example of a list question as it would appear in the assessment. So, I'll give you a passage first, quite short, and I'll read it out to you. The problem is growing at an alarming rate. There are animals becoming extinct on our planet every single day. They will never be seen again. For how much longer will we be able to see animals like the rhino, the giant panda, the snow leopard, and the blue whale in the wild? If we don't act now, all that will be left is pictures and YouTube videos of these wonderful and beautiful creatures. Okay, and the question looks like this. Look at lines 1 to 9, and then they quote the line to show us the problem up to beautiful creatures. Explain how one example of the writer's use of sentence structure makes it clear that there is a real threat of animals vanishing. Now, with this question, you have a choice in the exam. You can look for a list or parenthesis, rhetorical question, short sentence, any of these other techniques. But for this particular lesson, this video, I want to focus only on a list. So let's have a look again and see, can we see a list? So what you're looking for is that combination of comma, comma, and, or semicolon, semicolon, and, depending on the number of elements in the list. So again, pause the video if you want to take your time. I'm sure many of you have seen it already, because it's the same list we used in the earlier example. Now, I've highlighted the punctuation in red, but the elements in the list are in bold, black and bold. The list is the black elements. The red comma and the word and is not the list. The list is what's there in bold and black. So the rhino, the giant panda, the snow leopard, and the blue whale. That's the list. The sections in red are only there to help us see the list. They're not the list themselves. So how would we write down the answer? Well, we say the writer uses a list, and I tell my classes every year that whenever you write the word list in the National 5 Close Reading exam, you must follow it with the word of. That word has to be there in your answer. So if you're in my class, you will always write a list of, because that forces us then to give a title to the list, for us to identify the list more clearly. Now, you can get away without doing it sometimes at National 5, but it's good practice for higher. So the writer in this case uses a list of. Well, it wasn't car manufacturers, it wasn't American cities, it wasn't Scottish football teams, it was endangered species. So the writer uses a list of endangered species. That gets me one of the 2 marks. So it's a 2-mark question. I get 1 for picking the technique from under the umbrella term. So in this case it's a list. And then I get a 2nd mark for explaining what's the list doing. Okay, so for the 2nd mark I have to do a bit more work. So the writer uses a list of endangered species to highlight that even some of the most easily recognizable animals on the planet are at risk of disappearing. The list of endangered animals shows the shocking scale of the problem with so many well-known animals at risk of extinction. So what the writer was doing was giving us a list of animals that we recognize. Okay, we've all heard of a rhino. Okay, we may not have heard of a snow leopard, but we've definitely heard of a rhino and a blue whale. So we get the idea that the list here is to show that it's not a problem of one animal becoming extinct, it's a problem of many animals becoming extinct. And this is what most lists do. They give us a sense of quantity, so numbers, an amount of something, and a sense of scale, the size of something. So we're seeing that the size of the problem is large. We're seeing that the number of animals involved is also large. And that 2nd mark is for everything below the first line. So for any list question, identify the list to begin with. So you're telling the marker that even though this is a sentence structure question, I'm choosing to write about a list and say what it's a list of, and then explain why the writer used the list, focusing on whatever the question has asked us to look at. So back to where we were in the beginning. Sentence structure, be careful of it. Don't use it in your answer. It's just an umbrella term. Use one of the other techniques, and in this case we chose a list. Sentence structure is not a technique. A list is a technique, so we can use it. The writer uses a list of. and look out for the pattern. It's the pattern that will help you find the list, and then you can get to the work of actually writing down your answer. So that's it for the intro to the list. In the next video, I'm going to show you a common problem that happens with the list before moving on to one of the other techniques. See you there.